I didn't ask to be sold to 3 men. Amara whispered through her tears, but the Kim triplet brothers had already decided she would be their wife, all 3 of them, and her innocence would be theirs by the end of the month. Before we dive into this powerful and unique love story, please hit the subscribe button. Your support helps us keep stories like this alive. The black SUV's tires screeched against wet asphalt as Amara pressed herself against the brick wall, her dark skin glistening with rain, her heart hammering so violently she thought her ribs might crack. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking through her thin jacket, the cold soul night biting into her bones in a way that reminded her she was far from home, far from the warmth of Lagos. But she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at the 3 identical men stepping out of the vehicle with the fluid grace of predators who had cornered their prey. "Did you really think you could run from us, beautiful?" The voice was smooth, deadly, and belonged to the man in the center, his dark eyes gleaming with something between amusement and warning. Water dripped from his perfectly styled black hair, running down a face so beautiful it seemed carved by an artist with an obsession for symmetry and danger. His gaze traveled over her face, lingering on her full lips, her high cheekbones, her rich brown skin that stood out even in the dim street light. Amara's legs trembled. She had known this moment would come, had known since the night her father, desperate and drowning in gambling debts he'd accumulated during their years in Korea, had done the unthinkable. He had sold her not to 1 man but to 3. The Kim triplets, the most feared names in Seoul's underground world. Korean mafia royalty who controlled everything from the docks to the politicians. And now they controlled her. "Please," she whispered, hating how her voice broke, hating how her slight Nigerian accent made her feel even more vulnerable, more out of place in this cold city. "I just needed time to think." The man on the left, identical except for the slightly softer curve of his mouth, stepped forward. "Time to think." He tilted his head, and even in the dim street light, she could see the scar that ran just along his jawline, the only thing that distinguished him from his brothers. "You've had 3 weeks since the contract was signed, Amara. 3 weeks while we waited patiently. Our patience has run out." The third brother, who had been silent until now, moved with a speed that made her gasp. One moment he was by the car, the next he was directly in front of her, his hand braced against the wall beside her head, caging her in. Up close, she could see the tiny differences. This one's eyes were colder, harder, like polished obsidian. "You belong to us now," he said quietly, and somehow that whisper was more terrifying than any shout. "Running only makes this harder for you." "I didn't ask for this." The words burst out of her before she could stop them, fueled by 3 weeks of terror and rage and grief. "I didn't ask for my father to be a coward. I didn't ask to be sold like property to 3 men I've never even met. I didn't ask to be stranded in a country that still stares at me like I'm an outsider, like I don't belong." Silence, heavy and dangerous. Then the center one, the leader she instinctively knew, spoke again. "No, you didn't ask for this. But here we are. I am Doyen. This is Miho." He gestured to the one with the scar. "And that is Jin-woo. We are the Kim brothers, and as of 3 weeks ago, you became our wife." Singular. 1 woman, 3 husbands. That was the agreement your father made to clear his debt and save his miserable life. Wife. The word hit her like a physical blow. She had read the contract, had seen the words in Korean that her father had translated with shame in his eyes, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that terrified her down to her bones. "I'm 22 years old," she said, and she hated how young and small her voice sounded. "I'm a virgin. I don't know how this is supposed to work." Something flickered across Doyen's face. Surprise, interest. It was gone before she could identify it. Miho's expression softened almost imperceptibly, while Jinwoo's jaw tightened. "That," Doyen said slowly, "changes things." "How?" She challenged, finding a spark of defiance in her fear. "Does it make me more valuable? More interesting? Or just more pathetic?" Jinwoo's hand moved from the wall to her chin, tilting her face up to meet his gaze. His touch was firm but not cruel, and she felt the contrast of his pale fingers against her dark skin, a visual reminder of how different their worlds were. "It makes you ours to teach," he said, and there was something dark and promising in those words that sent heat spiraling through her despite everything. "Ours to mold. Ours to claim properly. Miho stepped closer, and now she was surrounded by them, 3 walls of masculine power and barely restrained intensity. We're not monsters, Amara, he said, and his voice was gentler than his brother's, like warm honey compared to their sharp edges. But we are dangerous men who live in a dangerous world. We need a wife for reasons that go beyond desire. We need legitimacy, a united front, someone who belongs to all 3 of us equally to prevent rivalry and division in our organization. And we need you intact, Doyen added, his eyes moving over her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Unspoiled. Our grandfather's will was very specific. We inherit everything, the entire empire, only if we marry the same woman, and that marriage is consummated by all 3 of us. Your father's debt gave us the perfect opportunity. You gave us the perfect candidate. The rain had slowed to a drizzle now, but Amara barely noticed. Her mind was racing, trying to process everything. So what happens now? She asked. You drag me to some fortress and lock me away? Force me to submit? No. Doyen's answer was immediate and surprisingly firm. You will come with us willingly, or not at all. We will not force you into our bed, Amara. But understand this. Your father's debt still exists. If you refuse this marriage, he dies. Slowly, painfully. And you will spend the rest of your life knowing you could have saved him. It was the cruelest kindness, giving her a choice that wasn't really a choice at all. She thought of her father, weak and foolish but still the man who had brought her to Korea when she was 16, promising her a better life. The man who had raised her alone after her mother died back in Nigeria. She thought of the tiny apartment they shared in Itaewon, the way he cried when the men came to collect, the way he couldn't even look at her when he signed the papers. She thought of her own life, working 3 jobs just to keep them fed, enduring the stares and whispers of people who saw her dark skin and assumed things, never having time for friends or dating or any of the normal experiences girls her age should have. She had been surviving, not living. And now these 3 terrifying, beautiful men were offering her something else. Something dark and complicated and utterly insane. If I agree, she said slowly, meeting each of their gazes in turn, I want your word that my father's debt is forgiven completely. And I want him protected. No more collectors. No more threats. Doyen's lips curved into something that might have been approval. Done. And I want time, she continued, her courage growing as she spoke. I'll come with you. I'll be your wife. But I need time before the consummation. Time to adjust. Time to understand what this life means. The brothers exchanged glances, some silent communication passing between them that she couldn't decipher. 1 month, Jinwoo said finally. We'll give you 1 month to adjust to your new life, to learn our world, to learn us. But after that month, Amara, you will fulfill every part of this contract. And when we take you, when all 3 of us claim what is ours, you will take every inch until you can no longer walk. That is not a threat. It is a promise. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they sent a shiver of something else entirely down her spine, something hot and confusing that she had no name for. Miho extended his hand to her, palm up, an invitation rather than a demand. Come home with us, beautiful. Let us show you that this cage we're offering might not be a prison after all. Amara looked at that hand, at the 3 men who now held her entire future in their grasp, at the rain-soaked street behind her that led back to a life of poverty and fear. She thought about the impossible situation, the insane arrangement, the African girl about to enter a world of danger and darkness with 3 Korean mafia princes who wanted to share her between them. And then, with a deep breath that felt like stepping off a cliff, she placed her dark hand in Miho's pale one, watching their fingers intertwine like a promise written in contrasts. The SUV's interior was warm, leather-scented, and utterly silent except for the drum of rain on the roof. Amara sat in the back, squeezed between Doyen and Jinwoo, while Miho drove with the easy confidence of someone who owned the roads. No one spoke. The silence was heavy, charged with unspoken promises and threats and something else she couldn't quite name. She stared at her hands, at the way her dark skin looked against the cream-colored leather, at the way they trembled slightly despite her best efforts to appear calm. This was real. This was happening. In the span of 30 minutes, her entire life had shifted on its axis. The compound appeared through the rain like something from a dark fairy tale. Massive iron gates swung open automatically, revealing a sprawling estate that seemed to go on forever. The main house rose 3 stories high, all dark stone and sharp angles and windows that gleamed like watchful eyes. Security cameras were visible everywhere, and Amara spotted at least 6 armed guards patrolling the perimeter. "Welcome home," Doyen said quietly, and the word home felt like both a promise and a sentence. The car stopped under a covered entrance, and Miho opened her door, offering his hand again. She took it, stepping out onto marble floors so polished she could see her reflection, a dark-skinned woman in cheap clothes standing in a palace. A woman in her 50s, dressed in an immaculate black suit, stood waiting. "This is Mrs. Choi," Doyen said. "She manages the household. Anything you need, you ask her." Mrs. Choi's expression was professionally neutral, but Amara caught the flicker of surprise, maybe even curiosity, in her eyes. She had probably never seen anyone like Amara in this house before. "Miss Amara," she said with a slight bow. "I'll show you to your quarters." "Our quarters," Jingwoo corrected, his hand settling possessively on Amara's lower back. "She stays in the main suite with us." Amara's heart stuttered. "I thought, the month you promised, I assumed I'd have my own space." "You'll have your own room within the suite," Miho explained, his tone gentle but firm. "But you sleep in our wing, under our protection. The compound is secure, but we have enemies, Amara. Many enemies. Until you understand how to navigate this world, you don't leave our sight." The main suite was larger than her entire apartment had been. Mrs. Choi led her through a sitting room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking gardens she could barely see in the darkness, past a kitchen area, and finally to a bedroom that made her breath catch. The bed was enormous, easily big enough for 4 people, draped in midnight blue silk. But it was the 3 doors along the far wall that caught her attention. "The brothers' private rooms," Mrs. Choi explained. "Each has their own space for work and personal time. This central room is shared territory." "And mine?" Amara asked. Mrs. Choi opened another door, revealing a smaller but still luxurious bedroom done in soft creams and golds. A canopy bed, a writing desk, a door that led to what looked like a massive closet. "Your private sanctuary," the older woman said. "The only room with a lock, if you wish to use it." After Mrs. Choi left, Amara stood in the center of her new room, trying to process everything. The silk pajamas laid out on the bed probably cost more than she made in a month. The bathroom attached to her room had a tub big enough to swim in. Everything smelled expensive, felt expensive, was expensive. And she, a Nigerian girl who had grown up sharing a single room with 2 sisters back in Lagos, was supposed to belong here. A soft knock made her jump. Miho entered, carrying a tray with tea and small pastries. He had changed into more casual clothes, black pants and a fitted t-shirt that showed the lean muscle of his arms. The scar on his jaw seemed more prominent in the soft lamplight. "I thought you might be hungry," he said, setting the tray on the small table by the window. "You didn't eat, did you, when you were running?" Amara shook her head, suddenly aware that she was starving. She sat, and he poured the tea with practiced grace, his movements elegant and controlled. "You're afraid of us," he said. It wasn't a question. "Wouldn't you be?" She countered, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. His lips curved into a small smile. "Yes, I suppose I would be." He sat across from her, his dark eyes studying her face with an intensity that made her shift in her seat. "I'm the middle brother, though we were all born within minutes of each other. Doyen leads because someone has to, and he's the best at strategy, at seeing 10 moves ahead. Jingwoo is our enforcer, the one who handles the violent necessities of our business. And me?" He paused, taking a sip of his own tea. "I'm the diplomat. The one who smooths things over. Who remembers that even in our world, some humanity should remain." "Is that why you're here?" Amara asked. "To smooth me over? To make me compliant?" "I'm here because you looked completely overwhelmed, and I remember what that feels like." His expression grew distant. "When our father died and we inherited this empire at 25, I was terrified. Doyen hid it behind control. Jinwoo behind anger. But I felt like I was drowning. This world, it's not easy, even when you're born into it. and you think I can survive it? Her voice was small, uncertain. Miho reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers, pale against dark. The touch was gentle, almost reverent. I think you're stronger than you know. You ran from us, Amara. Do you know how rare that is? Most people freeze when they see us coming. But you fought. You tried. That takes courage. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. His smile widened. The best kind of strength often looks like foolishness at first. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, and Amara found herself relaxing slightly. Of the three brothers, Miho felt the safest, the most approachable. But she reminded herself not to be fooled. He was still a killer, still a criminal, still a man who had agreed to share a wife with his brothers. Can I ask you something? She said quietly. Anything. Why does it have to be all three of you? I understand the will, the inheritance, but why not just marry me to one and fake the rest? Miho's expression grew serious. Because our grandfather was a wise man who understood our nature. Doyen needs control, needs to lead and protect. Jinwoo needs intensity, needs to channel his darkness somewhere safe. And I need connection, need to nurture and be needed. One woman for one of us would never work. We'd compete. We'd destroy each other and her in the process. But one woman for all three of us, shared equally, loved equally, claimed equally, that creates balance. That creates unity. And what if I can't love all three of you? The question came out as a whisper. What if I can only ever see this as a transaction? His eyes softened with something that looked almost like sadness. Then we'll have failed you. Because this only works, Amara, if it becomes real. If you genuinely become ours and we become genuinely yours. The physical part, the consummation, that's just biology. But the emotional part, that's what will keep us all alive in this world. Before she could respond, the door opened and Doyen entered, his presence immediately dominating the space. He had also changed into dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that were corded with muscle and decorated with intricate tattoos she hadn't noticed before. Miho, he said, his tone neutral but somehow conveying a command. Jinwoo needs you in the security room. We have a situation with the shipment. Miho stood immediately, but he squeezed Amara's hand once before leaving. Get some rest. Tomorrow will be overwhelming too. Then she was alone with Doyen, the leader, the one whose eyes seemed to see straight through her skin to the terrified girl beneath. He moved to the window, looking out at the dark gardens, his back to her. Your father called earlier, he said. Crying. Thanking us. Begging us to be kind to you. Anger flared hot in Amara's chest. He has no right to ask anything of you. He's the reason I'm here. True. Doyen turned to face her, and the intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. But he loves you, in his weak, pathetic way. He wanted me to tell you that he's sorry. That if he could have found any other way, he would have. There's always another way, she said bitterly. Not always. Not in our world. He moved closer, and she instinctively stood, not wanting him to tower over her while she sat. Even standing, he was significantly taller, broader, more imposing. You asked Miho why it has to be all three of us. Let me give you the answer he was too kind to say. We're dangerous men, Amara. We kill without hesitation when necessary. We've built an empire on blood and fear and calculated violence. We can't afford weakness. We can't afford division. A woman shared between us isn't a luxury. It's a necessity. It's insurance that none of us becomes more powerful than the others. That none of us can be compromised or controlled through emotional attachment to someone the others don't have equal claim to. So I'm a strategic asset, she said, lifting her chin even as her heart raced. A living contract to keep you from killing each other. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. You're that. But you're also going to be the most protected, most valued, most thoroughly worshipped woman in this entire city. Because we may be monsters, Amara, but we take care of what's ours. And make no mistake, you're ours now. He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive and utterly masculine. His hand rose, and she forced herself not to flinch as he traced her jawline with one finger, the touch surprisingly gentle from a man who commanded an empire of violence. His pale finger against her dark skin created a contrast that seemed to fascinate him. "You're trembling," Doyen observed, his finger still tracing the line of her jaw with maddening slowness. "But not entirely from fear." "Interesting." Amara wanted to deny it, wanted to step back and put distance between herself and this man who seemed to read her like an open book. But something kept her rooted in place, some mixture of defiance and curiosity and a heat building low in her belly that she had no experience with. "I don't know what I'm feeling," she admitted, the honesty surprising even herself. I haven't ever been touched like this." His eyes darkened, pupils dilating. "Never? Not even innocent touches? A boy holding your hand? Stealing a kiss?" "I worked 3 jobs," she said, and some of the old bitterness crept into her voice. "I didn't have time for boys or dating or any of the normal things. Every moment was about survival, about keeping us fed and housed. And in this country," she added, her voice dropping, "the boys here don't look at girls like me that way. I'm too different. Too foreign." Something shifted in Doyen's expression, a crack in the controlled mask he wore. "Then we truly are your first everything," he said quietly, and there was possession and something almost like reverence in his tone. "Your first touch. Your first kiss. Your first taste of desire. And eventually, your first pleasure. Your first pain. Your first complete surrender." The words should have frightened her. Instead, they ignited something wild and reckless inside her chest. "You sound very certain that I'll surrender to you." "To us," he corrected. "And yes, I am certain. Because underneath the fear, underneath the justified anger at your situation, you're curious. You want to know what it feels like to be desired, to be claimed, to be the center of attention for 3 men who would burn the world down to keep you safe." His thumb brushed across her lower lip, and her breath hitched audibly. "There it is," he murmured. "That spark of want. Don't be ashamed of it, Amara. Desire is honest. It's perhaps the only honest thing between us right now." "I don't want to want this," she whispered, but even to her own ears it sounded like a lie. "I know." His hand dropped away, and she hated the small sound of protest that escaped her throat. His smile was knowing, satisfied. "But you will. And when you finally admit it, when you stop fighting the inevitable and accept that this arrangement might give you something you've been missing your entire life, then we'll show you pleasures you can't even imagine yet." He turned to leave, and panic fluttered in her chest. She didn't want to be alone, didn't want to be left with her racing thoughts and confused feelings. "Wait," she called out. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do tomorrow. What my role is here." Doyen paused at the door. "Tomorrow you rest. You explore the compound if you wish, though you'll have a guard with you. Mrs. Choi will bring you appropriate clothes. In the evening, you'll have dinner with us. A proper dinner where we begin to learn each other. This marriage may have started as a transaction, but it won't remain one. We'll make sure of that." Then he was gone, and Amara was alone with the thundering of her heart and the ache of something she couldn't name pulsing through her veins. She didn't sleep well. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, and her mind wouldn't stop replaying every moment, every touch, every word. When dawn broke, painting her room in shades of gold and pink, she felt exhausted and wired all at once. Mrs. Choi arrived with breakfast and an entire wardrobe of clothes that made Amara's eyes widen. Designer labels she recognized from magazine covers. Fabrics so fine they felt like water against her skin. Colors that complemented her dark skin tone in ways her old clothes never had. "The brothers were very specific about your sizes and preferences," Mrs. Choi said with a knowing smile. "They've been preparing for your arrival for weeks." "They knew I'd come?" Amara asked, selecting a simple pair of jeans and a soft sweater, the most normal things in the overwhelming collection. "They knew you'd have no choice," Mrs. Choi corrected gently. "But they hoped you'd come willingly. There's a difference, and it matters to them more than you might think." After breakfast, true to Doyen's word, a guard appeared. He was young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. "I'm Taehyun," he said. "I'll be your primary security when the brothers are occupied with business." Wherever you want to go on the compound, I'll accompany you. The estate was even more massive in daylight. Amara explored gardens that seemed to stretch forever, a library that rivaled any she'd seen, a gym that looked like it belonged in a luxury hotel, and even an indoor pool with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city below. Everything was beautiful, expensive, and utterly surreal. She found herself in the library, running her fingers along the spines of books in languages she couldn't read, when she heard piano music drifting from somewhere deeper in the house. Following the sound, she discovered a music room she hadn't seen in last night's tour. Jinwoo sat at a grand piano, his fingers moving across the keys with surprising delicacy for a man she'd been told was an enforcer, a killer. He was dressed casually in dark jeans and a black t-shirt that stretched across his broad shoulders, and his eyes were closed as he played something melancholic and beautiful. He didn't stop when she entered, but he opened his eyes and held her gaze while his hands continued their dance across the keys. The intensity of his stare was different from his brother's. Where Doyen's gaze was calculating and Miho's was gentle, Jinwoo's was raw, almost feral, like he was looking at something he wanted to devour. When the song ended, silence fell heavy between them. "I didn't know you played," Amara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There's a lot you don't know about us yet." He stood, moving around the piano with the fluid grace of a predator. "Just like there's a lot we don't know about you. But we will. We'll learn every secret, every fear, every desire hidden in that beautiful head of yours." "Why do you stare at me like that?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "Like you're angry with me." Jinwoo stopped a few feet away, his jaw tightening. "I'm not angry with you. I'm angry at the situation. At the fact that you're here because of your father's weakness, not because you chose us. I'm angry that we have to wait, have to be patient when every instinct I have is screaming at me to claim what's mine." "I'm not a thing to be claimed," she said, lifting her chin defiantly. "No," he agreed, and he closed the distance between them in 2 long strides. "You're a woman. A beautiful, untouched, terrified woman who has no idea what she does to us just by breathing the same air. Do you know what it took for me not to touch you last night? Not to follow Doyen into your room and show you exactly what it means to belong to the Kim brothers?" Her heart was racing again, that same confusing heat building inside her. "Then why didn't you?" "Because unlike what you might think, I'm not a complete monster." His hand rose, cupping her face with surprising gentleness, his pale palm warm against her dark cheek. "Because you deserve time to adjust, to understand, to want this as much as we do. And you will want it, Amara. I'll make sure of it." "You're very confident," she whispered. "I'm very determined." "There's a difference." His thumb stroked her cheekbone, and his eyes dropped to her lips. "I want to kiss you. I've wanted to since I first saw you pressed against that wall in the rain, looking like a frightened bird." "May I?" The fact that he asked, that this dangerous man who could take whatever he wanted was asking for permission, broke something loose inside her chest. "I've never been kissed," she admitted. "I don't know how." His smile was slow, predatory, and absolutely devastating. "Good. That means we get to teach you everything. And trust me, beautiful, we're very thorough teachers." He lowered his head slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull away. She couldn't. Her eyes fluttered closed as his lips brushed against hers, featherlight at first, testing, teasing. Then he applied more pressure, his mouth moving against hers with a skill that made her knees weak. His free hand came to her waist, pulling her closer, and she made a small sound of surprise that he swallowed with a deepening of the kiss. His tongue traced the seam of her lips, and instinctively she opened for him, gasping as he explored her mouth with devastating thoroughness. Heat exploded through her body, pooling low in her belly, making her aware of sensations she'd never experienced before. She gripped his shirt, holding on as the world tilted and spun around her. This was nothing like she'd imagined a kiss would be. This was consuming, overwhelming, utterly intoxicating. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. His eyes were nearly black with desire, and she could feel the evidence of his wallet pressing against her hip. That, Jinwoo said, his voice rough and deeper than before, was just the beginning. Imagine what it will feel like when all 3 of us touch you at once. When you're surrounded by us, worshipped by us, taken by us until you forget where you end and we begin. Amara's legs trembled, and she had to grab his arms to steady herself. The kiss had awakened something inside her, something hungry and desperate that she'd never known existed. Her lips felt swollen, sensitive, and she could still taste him on her tongue. "I can't think when you talk like that," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Good. Thinking is overrated." His hand slid down to her hips, holding her against him. "Feeling is what matters. And right now, you're feeling something, aren't you? Something new and frightening and exciting all at once." She couldn't deny it. Her entire body was alive with sensation, with want, with a need she didn't understand but couldn't ignore. "This is happening too fast," she said, but even she could hear the lack of conviction in her words. "We have a month, Amara. 29 days now. And every single one of them, we're going to break down another wall, strip away another layer of resistance until you're begging us to complete this marriage in every way possible." He released her slowly, stepping back, and the loss of his warmth felt like a physical ache. "But for now, I'll let you breathe. Go explore. Run if you need to. Just remember, beautiful, there's nowhere in this compound, nowhere in this city where you'll be beyond our reach." She fled, her heart pounding, her body still humming with the aftershocks of that kiss. Taehyun followed at a discreet distance as she made her way back to the main suite, needing the sanctuary of her private room. But when she entered the shared living space, she found Miho waiting, lounging on the sofa with a book. He looked up as she entered, and his eyes immediately narrowed. "Jingwoo kissed you," he stated. Not a question, but a fact. Her hand flew to her lips self-consciously. "How did you? You have that look." Dazed, flushed, a little wild around the edges. He set his book aside and stood, moving toward her with that same fluid grace all three brothers possessed. "And your lips are swollen. Was it good? Did he make you feel things you've never felt before?" The directness of the question should have embarrassed her. Instead, it sent another wave of heat through her body. "Yes," she admitted, because lying seemed pointless. Miho's smile was softer than Jinwoo's had been, but no less dangerous. "I'm glad. We want you to feel good, Amara. We want you to associate us with pleasure, with safety, with everything you've been missing in your life." He reached out, tucking a strand of her hair behind her ear. "May I kiss you too? I promise I'll be gentler than Jinwoo." Well, gentler at first, anyway. She should say no, should retreat to her room and process everything that was happening. But that awakened part of her, the part that Jinwoo's kiss had brought to life, wanted more. Wanted to know if Miho would feel different, taste different, make her feel different things. "Yes," she breathed, and his smile widened. Unlike Jinwoo's consuming intensity, Miho's kiss was a slow seduction. He cradled her face in both hands, his thumbs stroking her cheeks as he lowered his lips to hers with infinite patience. He kissed her like she was precious, fragile, something to be savored rather than devoured. His lips moved against hers in a gentle rhythm, coaxing rather than demanding. And when his tongue swept into her mouth, it was with a tenderness that made her chest ache. This kiss was different. Where Jinwoo had ignited fire, Miho kindled warmth. Where Jinwoo had overwhelmed, Miho cherished. And somehow that gentleness was just as devastating, just as effective at dismantling her defenses. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathing in sync. "You taste like hope," he murmured. "Like something pure in our dark world. Do you have any idea how addictive that is?" Before she could answer, the door opened and Doyen walked in, his presence immediately commanding attention. His eyes moved from Miho to Amara, taking in their proximity, her flushed cheeks, the way her lips parted as she tried to catch her breath. "I see my brothers couldn't wait," he said, and there was amusement and something darker in his tone. "Can you blame us?" Miho replied, but he stepped back, giving Amara space. "She's irresistible." Doyen's gaze locked onto Amara's, and she felt pinned, captured, utterly unable to look away. "Have they been too much?" He asked her directly. "You have permission to tell me if you need them to slow down." It was a test, she realized. He was giving her an opportunity to set boundaries, to prove that her consent mattered to them. The knowledge settled something anxious inside her chest. "No," she said honestly. "They haven't been too much. Just intense. Intense is our default setting, I'm afraid." He moved closer, and unlike his brothers, he didn't reach for her immediately. Instead, he circled her slowly, like a predator assessing prey, and she felt his gaze like a physical touch. Jinwoo kissed you with passion. Miho kissed you with tenderness. Would you like to know how I kiss? Her mouth went dry. Yes. Brave girl. He stopped in front of her, so close she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. When I kiss you, Amara, it won't be gentle like Miho or consuming like Jinwoo. When I kiss you, it will be a claiming. A statement. A promise that you belong to us in every way possible. Are you ready for that? She should say no. Should ask for more time, more space to process the overwhelming sensations already flooding through her. But that reckless, newly awakened part of her wanted to know, needed to know what it would feel like to be claimed by this dangerous man who commanded an empire. Show me, she whispered. His smile was sharp, satisfied, the smile of a man who had just won a battle. He didn't ask permission like Jinwoo or give her time to prepare like Miho. He simply took. His hand fisted in her hair, tilting her head back at an angle that gave him complete control, and his mouth crashed down on hers with a force that stole her breath. This kiss was domination. His tongue invaded her mouth, claiming every inch, leaving no doubt about who was in control. His other hand gripped her hip, pulling her flesh against his body, and she could feel every hard plane of muscle, every controlled breath, every ounce of leashed power in his frame. She should have been frightened, should have pulled away from the sheer intensity of his possession. Instead, she melted into him, her hands clutching his shirt as her knees gave out. He held her up easily, his arm like steel around her waist, and he kissed her until she was dizzy, breathless, completely consumed by sensation. When he finally released her, she would have fallen if Miho hadn't been there to catch her. Easy, Miho murmured, steadying her. Doyen tends to forget that not everyone can handle his intensity. She handled it perfectly, Doyen said, his voice rough with satisfaction. His thumb brushed across her swollen lips, and his eyes were dark with promise. She's stronger than she looks. Braver too. By the time our month is up, she'll be able to take everything we give her and beg for more. Amara's head was spinning. 3 kisses from 3 different men, each one more overwhelming than the last, each one breaking down another piece of her resistance. She was supposed to be angry, supposed to resent being sold into this arrangement. But standing there, held between Miho's gentle support and Doyen's possessive gaze, with the memory of Jinwoo's consuming passion still burning on her lips, she felt something else entirely. She felt wanted. Desired. Cherished in a dark, twisted way that somehow felt right. I need to lie down, she said, her voice barely steady. Of course. Miho guided her toward her private room. Rest. Tonight we have dinner together. A chance to talk, to learn each other beyond the physical. Despite what you might think, we do want to know you, Amara. Your thoughts, your dreams, your fears. All of you. As she closed the door to her room and collapsed on the bed, her fingers rose to touch her lips, still tingling from 3 different kisses. This was insane. Impossible. She was falling for 3 men who had essentially bought her. 3 dangerous criminals who controlled an empire built on violence and fear. But God help her, she was falling. And the most terrifying part was that she wasn't sure she wanted to stop. If you're captivated by Amara's impossible choice and want to see how 3 dangerous men break down every wall around her heart, you need to stay with this story. Subscribe now because what happens next will change everything. The dinner tonight, it's just the beginning of her complete surrender, and you won't want to miss a single moment of her transformation. Amara stood in front of the full-length mirror in her room, barely recognizing the woman staring back at her. Mrs. Choi had laid out a dress for dinner, a deep burgundy silk that hugged her curves before flowing out at the knees. It was elegant, sophisticated, and made her dark skin glow like polished mahogany. Her natural hair, which she usually kept in simple braids, had been styled into an elaborate updo that showcased her long neck and high cheekbones. Her hand shook as she fastened the delicate gold necklace that had been left with the dress, a small pendant that she realized with a jolt was 3 intertwined circles. A symbol. A brand. A declaration of ownership. She should take it off, should refuse to wear something so blatant. But her fingers wouldn't cooperate, and the necklace stayed exactly where it was, warm against her skin. A knock at her door made her jump. "It's me," Miho's voice came through. "May I come in?" "Yes," she called, turning away from the mirror. He entered, and his breath caught audibly when he saw her. He was dressed in all black, a perfectly tailored suit that made him look both elegant and dangerous. "You're stunning," he said simply, his eyes moving over her with open appreciation. "That color was made for you. Your skin, it's like it was meant to wear that shade. Did you pick this out?" she asked. "We all did, together. We spent an embarrassing amount of time debating colors and styles." His smile was self-deprecating. Jinwoo wanted red, something bold. Doyen wanted black, something powerful. I wanted something that would make you feel beautiful without making you feel like you were wearing a costume. I think we compromised well. The idea of these three dangerous men sitting together debating dress colors for her was so unexpected it made her chest tight. "Thank you," she said softly. He offered his arm. "Come. Dinner is ready, and my brothers are surprisingly nervous, though they'd never admit it." The dining room had been transformed. Instead of the massive formal table, a smaller, more intimate one had been set up near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. Candles flickered, casting warm shadows, and soft music played from hidden speakers. It looked less like a business dinner and more like a date. A very unusual date with three men instead of one. Doyen and Jinwoo were already there, both dressed in dark suits that made them look like they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. They stood when she entered, and the synchronized movement was both beautiful and slightly unnerving. "Amara," Doyen said, and his voice was warm, almost gentle. "You look breathtaking." Jinwoo didn't speak, but his eyes said everything. They devoured her, moving from her face to the necklace at her throat to the way the dress accentuated her curves. She felt heat bloom under her skin from the intensity of his gaze. Miho guided her to a seat, and she found herself positioned so that all three brothers were within easy reach, forming a triangle around her. Servers appeared, bringing course after course of food so exquisite it was almost art. But Amara could barely taste any of it, too aware of the three pairs of eyes watching her every movement. "You're tense," Doyen observed, his tone almost clinical. "Why?" "Because this is surreal," she said, setting down her fork. 3 days ago I was working at a convenience store in Itaewon, counting coins to buy instant noodles. Now I'm sitting in a mansion wearing a dress that probably costs more than I made in a year, having dinner with three men who expect me to marry them. All of them. How am I supposed to not be tense?" "Fair point," Miho conceded. "So let's make this less surreal. Let's just talk. Get to know each other like normal people on a normal date." "There's nothing normal about this," she countered. "Then let's be abnormal together," Jinwoo said, speaking for the first time. His voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in a while. "Ask us anything. We'll answer honestly." Amara considered this, then decided to start with something that had been bothering her. "Why aren't you married already? You're all successful, powerful, attractive. Why did you need your grandfather's will to force this?" The brothers exchanged glances, and Doyen took the lead. "Because we tried the conventional route. We each dated, each tried to find someone who could handle our world, our lifestyle, our brotherhood. It never worked. Women wanted one of us, not all of us. Or they wanted our money and power but couldn't handle the darkness that comes with it. Or they tried to drive wedges between us, to secure their position by making one of us favor them over the others. Our grandfather saw the problem," Miho continued. "He knew that dividing us would destroy everything he built. So he created a solution. One woman, chosen not for her wealth or connections, but for her strength and resilience. Someone who had survived hardship and understood loyalty and sacrifice. He chose a girl from the community center records," Jinwoo added, his eyes locked on hers. "A girl who had worked multiple jobs to support a father who didn't deserve her loyalty. A girl who never gave up, never stopped fighting, even when the world gave her every reason to quit. Even when people in this country made her feel like she didn't belong because of the color of her skin. He chose you, Amara. Not randomly. Deliberately." The revelation hit her like a physical blow. "He knew about me?" Specifically? He'd been watching you for 2 years, Doyen confirmed. Not in a creepy way, but through the community center reports, through your employers, through people who knew you. He saw your character, your strength, your capacity for love despite having so little of it in your own life. And then when your father's death came to our attention, he saw an opportunity. He set this in motion before he died. Made sure the will was ironclad. Made sure you would come to us. Tears burned in Amara's eyes. She didn't know whether to feel violated or valued. So I never had a choice. This was always going to happen. You always had a choice, Miho said gently, reaching across the table to take her hand, his pale fingers wrapping around her dark ones. You could have refused, let your father face the consequences of his actions, walked away from all of this. But you didn't. You chose to save him. That choice brought you here. But what happens next? That's entirely up to you. Is it? She looked at each of them in turn. You've already decided that I'm yours. You've already planned out how this month will go, how you'll seduce me, how you'll make me want this arrangement. Where's my choice in any of that? Right here, Doyen said, standing and moving to kneel beside her chair. The powerful mafia leader on his knees, looking up at her with something vulnerable in his eyes. Choose to give us a real chance. Not because of the contract or your father's debt or our grandfather's will. Choose to let us prove that we can make you happy, that this unconventional arrangement can become something beautiful and real. Jinwoo stood too, moving to her other side, also kneeling. Choose to trust that when we say we'll protect you, worship you, give you everything you've ever been denied, we mean it. Choose to believe that we see you, Amara. Not just a beautiful woman, but you. Your strength, your fire, your worth. Miho completed the triangle, kneeling in front of her, taking both her hands in his. Choose to believe that 3 broken men can love one extraordinary woman enough to become whole. That's the choice we're asking you to make, Amara. Not tonight, not even this month, but eventually. Choose us. Choose this family we're building. The sight of them, 3 of the most dangerous men in the city on their knees before her, offering not demands but requests, broke something fundamental inside her chest. Tears spilled over, running down her cheeks, and she couldn't stop them. I'm so scared, she whispered. I'm terrified of wanting this, of needing you, and then having it all taken away. Everyone I've ever loved has left me. My mother died. My father betrayed me. And in this country, she sobbed, I've always been alone. Always different. Always the outsider. I don't know how to trust that this is real. Then we'll prove it every day, Doyen said fiercely, his hand coming up to cup her face, his thumb wiping away her tears. Every single day until you believe it in your bones. We're not going anywhere, Amara. We can't. We're bound to you by more than a contract now. We're bound by choice. She looked at them, these 3 beautiful, dangerous, complicated men who were offering her something she'd never had before. A home. A family. A place where she was valued not for what she could do, but for who she was. A place where being different wasn't a weakness but something cherished. I don't know how to do this, she said through her tears. I don't know how to be a wife to 3 men. I don't know how to navigate your world or handle the darkness that comes with it. You learn, Jinwoo said simply. We teach you, and you teach us how to be the men you deserve. It's a partnership, beautiful. We're all learning together. Miho squeezed her hands. Say yes. Not to the consummation, not yet. But to trying. To giving this a real chance. Say yes to us. The word hovered on her lips, terrifying and liberating all at once. Saying yes meant admitting she wanted this, that she was already falling for these 3 impossible men. It meant vulnerability, risk, the potential for devastating heartbreak. But it also meant possibility. It meant no more lonely nights in a cold apartment. No more working herself to exhaustion for a father who couldn't protect her. No more feeling like she didn't belong anywhere. No more wondering what it felt like to be cherished, desired, loved. Yes, she breathed, and the word felt like jumping off a cliff. Yes, I'll try. I'll give us a real chance. The relief and triumph on their faces was profound. Doyen stood, pulling her up with him, and then she was surrounded by all three of them, held in a circle of warmth and strength and promise. They didn't kiss her, didn't push for more. They just held her, and somehow that was more intimate than any kiss could have been. Are you still watching? Because this is where everything changes. Amara just said yes, and these three men are about to show her exactly what it means to be theirs. The seduction, the claiming, the complete transformation of a lonely girl into a queen of the underworld. It's all coming. Hit that subscribe button right now because the next part of the story will set your heart racing and leave you desperate for more. Don't miss what happens when the Kim brothers stop holding back. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of overwhelming sensation and cautious discovery. Amara found herself falling into a rhythm she never could have imagined, waking in her private room but spending her days and evenings woven into the lives of three men who seemed determined to prove their worth to her in every possible way. Doyen taught her about their business, the legitimate parts at least, showing her spreadsheets and contracts and the intricate web of companies that formed their empire. He spoke to her like an equal, asking her opinions, genuinely listening when she questioned his strategies. You have good instincts, he told her one afternoon, his hand resting possessively on her lower back as they stood in his office overlooking the city. You see patterns I miss because you come from a different world. Don't ever hide that perspective from me. Miho took her to art galleries and poetry readings, introducing her to Korean culture she'd only glimpsed from the outside. He held her hand in public, unashamed, even when people stared at the sight of a Korean man with an African woman. He would squeeze her hand tighter when she tensed at the stares, whispering explanations of paintings and sculptures in her ear until she forgot about everyone else. You have an artist's soul, he murmured one evening as they stood before a particularly moving piece. You see beauty even in broken things. That's rare. Precious. Jinwoo was different. He took her to the gym, teaching her self-defense with a patience that surprised her. You're in our world now, he explained, positioning her body with firm hands that lingered just a moment too long on her hips, her waist, her shoulders. You need to know how to protect yourself when we're not there. Though I plan to make sure that's as rare as possible. He was intense, demanding, pushing her until she was sweating and breathless. But the approval in his eyes when she finally executed a move correctly made every aching muscle worth it. And every night they had dinner together. Sometimes formal, sometimes casual, but always the four of them, talking and laughing and slowly, carefully building something that felt dangerously close to real. But it was the small moments that undid her. Doyen leaving coffee exactly how she liked it on her bedside table each morning. Miho leaving books he thought she'd enjoy, with handwritten notes in the margins translated into English for her. Jinwoo sitting outside her door at night, a silent guardian she only knew about because she'd woken once and heard his breathing on the other side. They were wooing her, seducing her, not just physically but emotionally, mentally, wrapping her so thoroughly in their care and attention that she was starting to forget what life felt like before them. It was the 15th night when everything shifted again. Amara had been reading in the shared living area, curled up on the sofa in soft pajama pants and a tank top, her natural hair loose around her shoulders in thick, beautiful curls. She thought the brothers were all occupied with business calls and meetings. But when she looked up from her book, she found all three of them standing there, watching her with identical expressions of hunger barely held in check. We need to talk, Doyen said, his voice rougher than usual. Her heart began to race. About what? About the fact that it's been 2 weeks, Jinwoo said, moving closer. 2 weeks of watching you, wanting you, holding ourselves back because we promised you time. But Amara, we're reaching our limit. Miho sat beside her, close enough that his thigh pressed against hers. We're not asking to complete the marriage tonight, he said softly. But we need more. We need to touch you, to show you pleasure, to begin preparing you for what's coming. Preparing me? Her voice came out breathy and nervous. Doyen knelt in front of her, his hands on her knees, spreading them just slightly so he could position himself between them. You're a virgin, Amara. When the three of us take you, it will be intense, overwhelming. We're not small men, and we won't be gentle forever. So we need to prepare your body, get you used to pleasure, to touch, to the idea of multiple hands on you at once. Heat flooded through her, pooling low in her belly. She should say no, should ask for more time. But her body was already responding, already aching for something she couldn't even name. "What exactly are you asking?" she whispered. "For permission to touch you," Miho said, his hand sliding up her arm, leaving goosebumps in its wake. "To kiss you everywhere. To make you come apart with our hands and mouths. To show you what pleasure feels like when you're the center of attention for 3 men who worship you. Tonight?" Her voice shook. "Only as much as you can handle," Jinwoo promised, moving to stand behind the sofa, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders, meeting the tension there. "The moment you say stop, we stop. But Amara, let us have you. Let us show you how good this can be." She looked at each of them in turn. Doyen's intense gaze, dark with promise. Miho's gentle eyes, warm with affection and desire. Jinwoo's fierce expression, raw hunger barely leashed. And she realized she didn't want to say no. She wanted this. Wanted them. Wanted to know what it felt like to be touched, pleasured, worshipped the way they promised. "Yes," she breathed. "But I don't know what to do." Doyen's smile was predatory and satisfied. "You don't have to do anything but feel. We'll handle the rest." What followed was the most overwhelming experience of Amara's life. They moved her to the massive bed in the central room, and then they surrounded her. Doyen claimed her mouth while Miho's hands explored her body over her clothes, learning her curves, finding sensitive spots she didn't know she had. Jinwoo's lips traced her neck, his teeth scraping gently, making her gasp and arch. "So responsive," Miho murmured appreciatively, his hand sliding under her tank top to palm her breast through her bra. "Every touch makes you tremble. I can't wait to see you completely undone." They removed her clothes slowly, reverently, each piece of fabric stripped away accompanied by kisses and caresses and words of praise that made her blush deeper than any touch. "Beautiful," Doyen said, his eyes drinking in her naked form, his pale hands contrasting against her dark skin in a way that seemed to fascinate him. "Absolutely perfect." "Ours," Jinwoo growled, his hand possessively spanning her stomach. "Every inch belongs to us now." Miho's touch was the gentlest, his fingers tracing patterns on her skin that made her shiver and burn. "We're going to make you feel things you've never imagined," he promised. "Trust us." And she did. She surrendered to their touches, to the overwhelming sensation of 6 hands exploring her body, 3 mouths tasting her skin, 3 voices murmuring praise and promises that made her head spin. They touched her everywhere except where she was beginning to ache most desperately, building her arousal until she was writhing, begging without words for something she'd never experienced. "Please," she finally gasped, and Doyen's smile was triumphant. "Please what, beautiful? Tell us what you need." "I don't know," she admitted, tears of frustration gathering in her eyes. I need something. Please." Miho's hand slid between her thighs, and she cried out at the first touch to her most intimate place. He explored gently, carefully, his fingers learning her folds, finding the small bundle of nerves that made her entire body jolt when he circled it. "Oh God," she moaned, her hips lifting involuntarily. "Not God," Jinwoo corrected, his mouth at her ear. "Us. We're the only ones who can make you feel like this. The only ones who ever will." They brought her to the edge again and again, learning what touches made her gasp, what rhythm made her moan, what words made her flush and tremble. And when Miho finally slid one finger carefully inside her, testing, stretching, preparing her for what was to come, the sensation combined with Doyen's mouth on her breast and Jinwoo's fingers on her clit sent her spiraling into her first orgasm. She shattered completely, her body arching off the bed, her voice crying out their names in a jumbled mess of sound, and waves of pleasure crashed through her with an intensity that left her sobbing and shaking in their arms. "Beautiful," Doyen murmured, gathering her close. "Absolutely beautiful." "That was just the beginning," Miho promised, pressing kisses to her damp temple. "Just a taste of what we'll give you." Jinwoo's hand stroked possessively down her side. "In 2 weeks, when our month is up, we'll make you feel that times 100. We'll take you together, fill you completely, make you ours in every possible way. And you'll take every inch, beautiful. Every single inch until you can't remember a time when you weren't ours." She should have been frightened by the promise, by the dark possession in his voice. Instead, wrapped in their arms, her body still humming with aftershocks of pleasure, she felt safe. Wanted. Cherished. She was falling in love with all three of them, and the realization should have terrified her. But as sleep claimed her, surrounded by their warmth and strength, she couldn't bring herself to fight it anymore. Can you feel it? The way Amara is surrendering piece by piece to these three dangerous men? The way they're claiming her body and heart with every touch, every promise, every moment of overwhelming pleasure? This is just the beginning of her complete transformation. In 2 weeks, they'll claim her fully, and what happens in that room will change everything. You need to subscribe right now because the final consummation is going to be intense, emotional, and absolutely unforgettable. Don't miss the moment when Amara finally becomes theirs in every way possible. Click subscribe and prepare yourself for the most passionate conclusion you've ever witnessed. The morning after was awkward in a way Amara hadn't expected. She woke in the central bed, surrounded by the scent of 3 different colognes and the warmth of bodies she'd fallen asleep pressed against. But when she opened her eyes, she was alone, the space beside her cool but recently vacated. Panic fluttered in her chest. Had last night been a mistake? Had she given too much too soon? Had they gotten what they wanted and now lost interest? But then the door opened and Miho entered, carrying a tray laden with breakfast, his smile warm and genuine. Good morning, beautiful. We thought you might want to sleep in after last night. He set the tray on the bed, then sat beside her, brushing hair from her face with tender fingers. How do you feel? Confused, she admitted, pulling the sheet up to cover herself more fully. You all left. Understanding dawned in his eyes. We didn't want to overwhelm you. Last night was intense, and we thought you might need space to process. But if you'd prefer we stay, all you have to do is ask. We're trying to read you, Amara, but we're not perfect at it yet. Relief flooded through her. I thought maybe you regretted it. Regret? He laughed, the sound rich and warm. Watching you come apart in our arms was the most beautiful thing I've ever witnessed. The only regret I have is that we have to wait 2 more weeks before we can be inside you, before we can make you completely ours. Heat bloomed in her cheeks at his directness, but she was getting used to the way they spoke, the raw honesty that left no room for misunderstanding. The door opened again, and Doyen entered, already dressed in a sharp suit, his phone in one hand. He looked every inch the powerful businessman, except for the way his eyes softened when they landed on her. You're awake. Good. We have a situation that requires our attention today, but we don't want to leave you alone. Would you be comfortable coming with us to the office? Our actual business office? Amara sat up straighter, clutching the sheet. Your legitimate one? Yes. He moved to sit on her other side, effectively bracketing her between him and Miho. We want you to understand all aspects of our lives, Amara, not just the private parts. Besides, it's time our employees met you. Time the world knows that the Kim brothers are no longer available. The possessiveness in his tone should have irritated her. Instead, it sent a thrill down her spine. What should I wear? His smile was approving. Mrs. Choi has already selected something appropriate. Professional, but unmistakably expensive. We want everyone to know exactly who you are the moment they see you. An hour later, Amara stood in front of the mirror again, this time wearing a tailored cream suit that fit her like it had been made for her body specifically. Which it probably had been, she realized. The brothers had thought of everything. Her hair had been styled by a woman Mrs. Choi brought in, swept up in an elegant twist that showcased her natural beauty without hiding it. Diamond studs, real ones that probably cost more than her father's entire debt, glittered in her ears. She looked powerful, sophisticated, like someone who belonged on the arm of billionaires. 3 billionaires. The office building was a towering glass structure in the heart of Seoul's financial district. When they entered, employees stopped and stared, their shock barely concealed. The Kim brothers were known for never bringing women to the office, for keeping their personal and professional lives completely separate. Amara's presence was a statement, and everyone knew it. She felt the stares more acutely than usual, aware of how she stood out not just as the brothers' companion but as the only black woman in the building. Doyen's hand rested possessively on her lower back as they walked through the corridors. Miho held her hand, his fingers intertwined with hers, and Jinwoo walked slightly behind, his presence a silent threat to anyone who might think to question or disrespect her. They brought her to a massive corner office with windows overlooking the entire city. This is our primary workspace, Doyen explained. We each have private offices for sensitive matters, but we do most of our collaborative work here. Together. Always together, Miho added. It's how we've built everything. Amara moved to the windows, looking out at the sprawling cityscape below. From this height, the world looked small, manageable, like something that could be controlled. She understood now why they worked here. It was a reminder of their power, their reach, their ability to shape the world around them. What exactly do you do? She asked. I know about the shipping companies and the real estate, but what else? We invest, Doyen said, coming to stand beside her. Technology, pharmaceuticals, entertainment. We find companies with potential and help them grow. Sometimes legitimately, sometimes through methods that exist in legal gray areas. And the illegal parts, she turned to face him directly. The parts you don't talk about. He studied her face, measuring her readiness for truth. We control the flow of certain goods through the port. We provide protection to businesses that can't rely on conventional law enforcement. We settle disputes in ways that don't involve courts or police. We exist in the shadows, Amara, handling the things that polite society pretends don't exist. You're criminals, she said. Not as an accusation, but as a statement of fact. We're pragmatists, Jinwoo corrected, moving to join them. We operate in a world where the rules don't apply the same way they do in yours. But we have our own code, our own sense of honor. We don't traffic in people or drugs. We don't harm innocents. We protect what's ours and punish those who cross us. Is that criminal? By legal standards, yes. By our standards, we're survivors doing what's necessary. Amara absorbed this, trying to reconcile the men who had held her so tenderly last night with the cold reality of what they did in the daylight. And you want me to be part of this world? We want you to be the light in it, Miho said softly. The reminder that there's something worth protecting, worth building for, worth being better for. You think we don't know we're broken? We know, Amara. We've always known. But maybe with you, we can be broken in a way that still works. That still means something. Before she could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. A young woman entered, professional and polite, but Amara caught the way her eyes lingered on Doyen, the way her smile was just a touch too warm. Mr. Kim, your 2 o'clock is here, she said, her voice syrupy sweet. Doyen barely glanced at her. Cancel it. Reschedule for next week. I'm occupied today. The woman's smile faltered. But sir, this is the investor from Tokyo. He flew in specifically. Then he can fly back and return next week. Doyen's tone was final, dismissive. His attention had already returned to Amara, making it abundantly clear where his priorities lay. The woman left, and Amara couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. She wanted you, she observed. Probably, Doyen agreed with a shrug. Half the women in this building have harbored fantasies about one or all of us at some point. It's irrelevant. They're not you. Does it bother you? Jinwoo asked, moving closer, his hand coming to rest on her hip. Knowing that other women want us? Knowing that before you, we could have had anyone we wanted. Amara considered the question honestly. Yes, she admitted. It bothers me. I don't like the idea of anyone else touching you, looking at you the way I do, having any part of what's mine. The 3 brothers exchanged glances, and their smiles were identical expressions of deep satisfaction. What's yours? Miho repeated, his voice rich with pleasure. Say that again. Heat flooded her face as she realized what she'd said, how possessive it had sounded. But she didn't take it back. Mine, she said more firmly. You're mine just as much as I'm yours. That's how this works, isn't it? Complete belonging on both sides. Yes, Doyen said, and there was something almost reverent in his tone. That's exactly how this works. We're yours, Amara. Every part of us. And anyone who doesn't understand that will learn very quickly. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and introductions, the brothers making it abundantly clear to everyone they encountered that Amara was not just a girlfriend or a casual companion, but their wife, their partner, their equal. She sat in on strategy sessions, offered opinions that were actually considered, and slowly began to understand the scope of the empire they controlled. But it was the drive home, squeezed in the back of the SUV between Doyen and Jinwoo while Miho drove, that the reality of her situation truly hit her. She had fallen. Completely. Irrevocably. She loved these three impossible, dangerous, complicated men. And the terrifying part was that she was starting to believe they loved her too. 2 weeks, Jinwoo murmured against her ear, his breath hot on her skin. 14 more days, and then you're ours completely. No more barriers. No more waiting. We'll spend an entire night making you ours, Amara. Taking you one by one, and then together, until you're screaming our names and begging for mercy we won't give. His words should have frightened her. Instead, they made her core clench with need, made her breath catch with anticipation. I'm ready, she whispered, and she meant it. I don't want to wait 2 more weeks. I want you now. All of you. The car swerved slightly as Miho's attention snapped to the rearview mirror. What did you just say? She looked at each of them at the shock and hunger and barely restrained need on their faces. I said I'm ready. Take me home. Make me yours completely. Tonight. If you think your heart is racing now, just wait. Amara just gave herself to 3 men who have been holding back for weeks. And what happens next is going to be explosive, passionate, and utterly consuming. The moment you've been waiting for is finally here, the complete claiming, the ultimate surrender. Subscribe right now because the next part is the climax of everything, and if you miss it, you'll regret it forever. Hit that button and prepare yourself for the most intense conclusion you could imagine. The mansion had never felt so charged with electricity. The moment they crossed the threshold, everything changed. The careful control the brothers had maintained for weeks shattered like glass, and Amara found herself swept up in a storm of hands and mouths and desperate, hungry kisses. Are you certain? Doyen demanded, gripping her face between his hands, forcing her to meet his intense gaze. Once we start, we won't stop. We'll take everything, Amara. Every inch of your innocence, every piece of your surrender. There's no going back from this. I don't want to go back, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I want to go forward. With all of you. Make me yours. Jinwoo growled, actually growled, and lifted her into his arms like she weighed nothing. Bedroom. Now. They carried her to the central suite, to that massive bed that had been waiting for this exact moment. They undressed her with reverence and urgency, each piece of expensive clothing falling away until she stood before them completely bare, completely vulnerable, and completely willing. You're shaking, Miho observed, his hands gentle as they ran down her arms. Fear or anticipation? Both, she admitted. I don't know what to expect. I don't know if I can handle all 3 of you. You can, Doyen assured her, his voice absolute certainty. Your body was made for this. Made for us. We'll make sure of it. They undressed themselves, and Amara's breath caught as she saw them fully for the first time. They were magnificent, all lean muscle and masculine power, and the evidence of their desire for her was unmistakable and intimidating. They were large, all of them, and the reality of what was about to happen made her knees weak. We'll prepare you, Miho promised, guiding her to the bed. We won't hurt you. Not more than is inevitable for your first time. What followed was an education in pleasure so thorough it bordered on torture. They touched her everywhere, learned every sensitive spot, every place that made her gasp and arch and beg. Miho's mouth between her thighs was a revelation, his tongue doing things that made her see stars. Doyen's fingers worked inside her, 1 and then 2, stretching her carefully while Jinwoo's mouth worshipped her breasts, his teeth scraping her sensitive nipples until she was writhing. They brought her to climax twice before anyone attempted to claim her fully, making sure her body was ready, relaxed, desperate for more than fingers and tongues could provide. I'll go first, Doyen said, his voice strained with the effort of control. I'm the most controlled. I can be gentle until you adjust. He positioned himself between her thighs, his body a magnificent weight above hers, and Amara was struck again by the contrast, his pale skin against her dark brown, 2 different worlds coming together. Look at me, he commanded, and she obeyed, her eyes locking with his as she felt the first press of him against her entrance. He was big, bigger than his fingers, bigger than anything her body had experienced. He pushed in slowly, so slowly, watching her face for every flicker of discomfort. The stretch burned, the invasion overwhelming, and she whimpered despite her best efforts to be brave. Breathe, he instructed, holding still, giving her time to adjust. Breathe through it, beautiful. Your body will accept me. Just breathe. She did, and gradually the burn shifted to something else, something that felt less like pain and more like fullness, like completion. He pushed deeper, inch by careful inch, until he was fully seated inside her, and they were joined completely. There, he breathed, and there was triumphant tenderness in his voice. You're mine now. You've taken all of me, and you're perfect. He began to move, slow and careful at first, letting her body learn the rhythm, learn the sensation of being filled and claimed. And then, as her whimpers turned to moans, as her hips began to rise to meet his thrusts, he let go of some of that iron control. The pleasure built with shocking intensity, different from what she'd felt before, deeper and more consuming. When she climaxed around him, her body clenching and pulsing, he followed with a groan that sounded like her name, and she felt the hot rush of him inside her, marking her, claiming her in the most primal way possible. He withdrew carefully, and immediately Miho was there, his touch gentle as he checked her, made sure she was okay. Can you take more? He asked. Can you take me too, or do you need rest? More, she gasped. Because despite the soreness, despite the overwhelming sensations, she wanted all of them. Needed all of them to complete this bond they were forging. Miho was different from Doyen. Where Doyen had been controlled intensity, Miho was passionate tenderness. He made love to her slowly, thoroughly, murmuring words of praise and affection with every thrust, some in Korean that she didn't understand but felt in her soul. So beautiful, he whispered against her lips, and she knew he meant it. So perfect for us. I love you, Amara. I love you so much it terrifies me. The confession, combined with the pleasure, broke something open inside her chest. I love you too, she sobbed, clinging to him. All of you. I love all of you. When Miho finished, shuddering above her with her name on his lips, Jinwoo took his place. And Jinwoo was everything she'd expected, raw intensity and barely leashed power. He flipped her onto her stomach, pulled her hips up, and took her from behind with a dominance that should have frightened her but instead sent her spiraling into another climax. You can take it, he growled as he drove into her, deeper and harder than his brothers had dared. You can take every inch, can't you, beautiful? Your body was made for this. Made to be filled by us. Claimed by us. Owned by us. Yes, she cried out, beyond words, beyond thought, existing only in sensation and pleasure and the overwhelming feeling of belonging. Yes, I'm yours. All yours. When Jinwoo finally finished, roaring his release, Amara collapsed on the bed, her body trembling with exhaustion and satisfaction. She had done it. She had taken all three of them, had given herself completely, and survived. Not just intact, but transformed. They gathered around her, cleaning her gently, tending to her soreness with warm cloths and gentle hands. Miho disappeared and returned with water and pain medication. Doyen massaged her aching muscles while Jinwoo held her, pressing kisses to her temple. You were magnificent, Doyen said, genuine awe in his voice. Better than any fantasy we had. How do you feel? Miho asked, concern evident in his eyes. Complete, she whispered. Like I found something I didn't know I was missing. Like I'm finally home. You are home, Jinwoo said fiercely. This is your home. We are your home. And nothing will ever take you from us. Nothing and no one. They fell asleep tangled together, for bodies that had become one unit, one family, one unbreakable bond. The morning sun streaming through the windows woke Amara to a new reality. She was sore, deliciously sore, and surrounded by the three men who had claimed every part of her last night. She was no longer a virgin, no longer an outsider to this world. She was Mrs. Kim, wife to three of the most powerful men in Seoul, and the realization filled her with a sense of purpose she'd never experienced before. Over the following weeks, Amara settled into her new role with a confidence that surprised everyone, including herself. She learned the business, became involved in the legitimate operations, and even started suggesting initiatives that impressed Doyen. She accompanied them to meetings, stood beside them at events, and made it clear to everyone that she was not just a decorative addition but a true partner. The physical intimacy between them deepened as well. Most nights she found herself in the central bed with all three of them, their bodies tangled together in ways that would have shocked her months ago but now felt natural, right? They learned her body as thoroughly as she learned theirs, discovering new ways to bring each other pleasure, building a sexual chemistry that was as much about emotional connection as physical satisfaction. But more than the business or the pleasure, it was the small moments that convinced Amara she had made the right choice. Doyen's hand finding hers under the table during stressful meetings. Miho leaving love notes and books he thought she'd enjoy, now in both Korean and English so she could practice the language. Jinwoo's protective presence whenever they went out, his eyes constantly scanning for threats, making sure she was safe from both danger and the occasional racist comment or stare. 6 months after that rainy night when they'd found her running, Amara stood in the same office overlooking Seoul. But this time, she wasn't a frightened girl being offered an impossible choice. She was a woman who had chosen her own fate, who had taken an insane situation and turned it into something beautiful. "What are you thinking about?" Doyen asked, coming to stand behind her, his arms wrapping around her waist. "About how different my life is now," she said, leaning back against his chest. "How 6 months ago I was alone and scared and barely surviving. And now I have everything I never knew I wanted." "We're the lucky ones," Miho said, joining them with Jinwoo close behind. "We were 3 broken pieces that didn't quite fit together. You made us whole." "Our grandfather knew," Jinwoo added, his hand covering hers where it rested on Doyen's arm. "He knew exactly what he was doing when he chose you for us. He saw what we couldn't see. That we needed someone strong enough to handle all 3 of us. Someone who understood struggle and survival. Someone who could be the bridge between our darkness and the light." Amara smiled, turning in Doyen's arms to look at all 3 of them. "I was so angry at him, at my father, at all of you for taking away my choice. But now I understand. Sometimes the best things in life come from the choices we're forced to make. Sometimes surrender is the bravest thing we can do." "I love you," Doyen said, and the words were echoed by his brothers, creating a harmony of devotion that made her chest tight with emotion. "I love you too," she replied. "All of you. Always." As the sun set over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Amara understood that this unconventional marriage, this impossible arrangement, had given her something she'd been searching for her entire life. Not just love or security or passion, though she had all of those in abundance. But belonging. Purpose. A family that was uniquely hers. She had taken every inch of what they offered, just as Jinwoo had promised that first night. Every inch of their darkness and their light, their passion and their tenderness, their broken pieces and their fierce devotion. And in return, they had given her the world. This wasn't just a story about a girl who married 3 men. This was a story about transformation, about finding love in the most unexpected places, about building a family from broken pieces and making it whole. About a Nigerian woman who crossed oceans and found home in the arms of 3 Korean men who saw her not as different, but as exactly what they needed. And their story was just beginning. If Amara's journey from terrified runaway to confident queen of an empire has captured your heart, if you felt every moment of her surrender and triumph, then you absolutely cannot stop here. This is the love story you didn't know you needed, raw, passionate, unconventional, and utterly unforgettable. Hit that subscribe button right now because there are more stories like this waiting for you. More heroines finding their strength in impossible situations. More love that defies every rule and crosses every boundary. Don't let this be the end. Subscribe and join a community that celebrates love in all its beautiful, complicated, passionate forms. Leave a comment below and tell me what you thought of Amara's story. Did her transformation move you? Do you believe in love that breaks all the rules? And hit that like button if you want more stories that will make your heart race and your soul soar. Your next obsession is just one click away. Subscribe now and thank me later when you're completely addicted to these stories that prove love knows no boundaries, not of culture, not of convention, not of anything. This is your moment. Don't miss it.